don't come in chasing the big deals. You're never going to grow as a broker just chasing those. You're going to have to do some smaller deals before you even get the opportunity to do the larger deal, before you have the trust required by a client to hire you onto a larger deal.
Welcome back to another episode of RESOLUT REveal, our very own podcast here at RESOLUT RE, where we go beyond the deal into the real stories, real strategies, real results, and people shaping the world of commercial real estate. Here with your hosts, me, Ray King, and Martin Turner, and today we're headed into the Austin market with someone who's not just producing results. He's helping define what success looks like for both his clients and colleagues alike. Michael Noteboom is a principal with RESOLUT RE, and he's known for more than just getting deals done. He's built a reputation on consistency, client care, and boots on the ground knowledge of the Central Texas market that you just don't pick up overnight. So today we'll dive into Michael's growth journey, lessons from the trenches, and what it takes to succeed as a top broker in one of the hottest markets in the country. So welcome to the show, Michael.
Thanks, guys. First podcast. Had a kid a month ago. Haven't slept well in the last however long that's been. So if this sucks, blame the kid.
Congratulations, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you.
So tell us about the baby. Just give us a little look into the private life of Michael Noteboom and family.
Well, I've got a wonderful wife. That's most important. And now I've got a wonderful baby who decided to come 5 weeks early. We got to know the NICU very well. We went to the NICU for 4 or 5 times a day for 3 weeks straight. And it was the most emotionally exhausting thing I've ever done in my life. As my wife puts it, we were kind of just in shock the whole time because you get numb after a while. And then, one day you show up and it's a great day. And one day you show up, it's a horrible day. And I just taken it day by day, visit by visit. It's tough going to the hospital 4 or 5 times every single day for 21 days straight. But we did it. And it was the right thing to do. And he'll remember none of it, but we will. And it was the right thing to do. And we are very, very glad to be home now. Been home for 2.5 weeks now, and frankly, it's way easier being home than at the NICU.
I bet.
But now I'm losing sleep, so pick whichever one you want.
Well, congratulations, man. I'm sure you're really blessed, and I know you guys are very happy. What a great
I got a great wife, and she's got it way worse than I do. That's for sure. But she's a champ and taking it by stride.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about, I want to get into some questions about you starting in your career. So what initially drew you into commercial real estate?
It's an interesting question. From Austin, born and raised, never lived anywhere else. I always say I don't have a great story because I didn't do the whole backpacking in Europe thing, but I did get to work as soon as possible, and I'm hoping to be thankful for that later in my life. But I think the real answer is my grandfather was at one time the CFO of Perry Homes. He was there for 30, 40 years, worked until he was 80 years old. And, I'm not going to act like I was bothering him with questions and asking him everything about his career and anything like that. But I knew what my grandfather did, and I knew he was successful at what he did. And I knew that he was in real estate. Granted, he was in residential development, building homes, but he was in the world of real estate. And so I went off to UT 2014 and had a family friend, super random, but it's just one of those God moments, I guess. Had a family friend approach me and told me I own some apartment complexes in West Campus being the main off-campus hub at UT. Curious if you'd want to go get your real estate license and fill up some apartment units or really do whatever you want to do. But here's this opportunity where all you got to do is go get your real estate license And, being in a fraternity, knowing sorority girls, knowing people from class, it was a perfect opportunity. And so 18-year-old, go and get his real estate license, for what it's worth, failing the test twice because I knew nothing, and finally got it. And I started doing residential apartment leasing deals around West Campus. Again, I mean, it was everything from finding a 6-bedroom house for 6 fraternity brothers, helping one person find a 1-unit. I mean, it was really, I say it was grunt work, really. It was all on Facebook Messenger, which seems so old school now. And sitting here thinking about it, I got no idea how these people found me. But it taught me deal making, and it taught me about, working for what I get paid. And it was obviously 100% commission. And I went to class not 40 hours a week, 15 hours a week, excuse me. And I was a full-time student doing it. And so I always say, I was making more money than any one of my peers, which just made my, social life a little bit better. And I really got a taste of what deal making was all about on a pretty micro scale, frankly. West Campus apartment leasing, probably not too much money to be made in that world as a broker. Obviously, people are making millions and millions developing those high rises, but I loved it. I loved working with people. Had no idea I would like it. I mean, I was a freshman. Someone approached me asking if I wanted to go do something. I'm not one to say no. I mean, only alternative is to go drink at the fraternity house or go to class. So it was the best thing for me. It was the best choice I ever made. I did it all 4 years of college. And what UT is great about, though, is they help you with internships over the summer. And so what I ended up doing is doing commercial real estate internships in the summer, coming back to school year, and doing my residential leasing. It was a perfect combo. I was an economics major. I was not going to school for real estate by any means, but I pretty much figured out at that point that this is what I wanted to do. Of course, those summer internships were not really deal making per se. It was more kind of what we make our interns do around Resolute, but it got me exposed to the commercial side of the business, which was just a way better fit. As good as touring apartments is, working with numbers and working with, frankly, more sophisticated owners was definitely something more attractive to me. And so coming up on my senior year, I knew I needed to do something because second semester of my senior year, I had one class. And parents were like, nah, don't graduate early, have your social life, finish it out, graduate when everyone else is graduating. And so that's what I did. Actually applied to Resolute on Indeed.com for the internship position, and was interviewed by Dave Burgraff, who we know now is representing Dutch Bros all over Texas, was a principal at the time. And I think January 26th of 2018, the same day Ray Kang started at Resolute, I walked in the door as an intern with Ray Kang. And I guess the rest is history, but we'll dive into that further in this podcast, I assume.
I didn't know you guys started on the same day.
Yeah, we started on the same day. Yeah.
Cool fact. And
That's yeah.
I actually started on the same day as Tucker Francis back in 2010.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Man, Tuck's been with us a long time, huh? Now that we think about it.
Yeah, he was starting as an intern at that time, and I was coming in as a broker. But
Kang was the first intern. Yeah.
That's right. Him and Barrett Espy. Yeah.
Wild.
So it sounds like you were very financially motivated in college, or was it what continued for you to keep doing that line of work for 4 years? I mean, most kids are mostly distracted or, always trying to look into do new things, or maybe go work at the bar because it's a much cooler experience, So what made you stick to it?
Well, I'll be honest, this is easier than working at a bar. I mean, I didn't have to stay up till 2 a.m. working at a bar. So, I mean, I don't know if it was financially motivating. We're talking what was I making? $300 a deal. I mean, I wasn't making much, but going back to it, I was making a lot more than my friends. And
Yeah, in college,
so,
that's not bad, I don't think.
yeah, right. And so,
Yeah.
I think really what it was, as crazy as it sounds, I really loved chasing these deals.
Mm.
Loved, finding who I was working with and finding them a spot and making money from it. And I can't say that I love touring around West Campus looking at disgusting apartments, but I loved the deal making. And I also loved that I was just working for me. I was never working for the guy that hired me. I was just hanging my license with him. And he didn't care what I did. He's a family friend. He understood, what my commitment level was. And I say hate to say commitment level, but really how much I could handle being a full-time student. But yeah, I mean, again, I was making what, like maybe 10 grand a semester. I was not making a lot of money. Um, but sure, comparatively more than my friends. But yeah, I wasn't staying up till 2 a.m. bartending or waiting tables or showing up to work at 8 a.m. It's none of that. It was, communicate with people on Facebook, text, email, figure out a time that works to go tour, do it, when I've got time. And, um, if I had more time, I could do more of it. If I had less time, there's a super easy way to slow it all down. So I think that was really attractive to it. And y'all are probably sitting here, nothing's really changed. We still are 100% commission and we still work when we want to work, and deal making better damn motivate you. And so it's just a natural transition, frankly, and thankfully doing bigger deals now and on a completely different side of the business, being commercial.
Michael, on that note, you know, I know you currently are known as a deal junkie,
Yeah.
and you do an insane number of leases every year. I'm sure we'll get into that later in the episode. Do you think that your experience as an apartment hunter turned you into a deal junkie, or do you think you just are a deal junkie by your DNA? I mean, if you did not have that experience at age 18, do you feel like you would have the
Yeah, I mean, there's two different paths that you can go in this business. I mean, those two paths are, do your 5 sales a year or do your 100 leases a year. Um, and I wrote about this on LinkedIn once. I frankly sleep better with a larger pipeline. If it was 5 deals in the pipeline at a time, and I could wake up in the morning and one of those deals, 20% of my pipeline is headed in the wrong direction, that's tough. Um, Alternatively, when there's 50 deals in the pipeline and one deal falls through, do I really care? Sure, I care. Am I going to lose sleep over one deal out of 50? Probably not. And so I really think that just doing the volume that I'm doing helps me sleep better. I would be nervous and anxious and worried all day long if I was focusing on, you know, 5 6 figure deals a year, because I mean, you all know we don't close every deal that comes to the table as
right?
much as the industry may think we do.
Yeah, you're not labeling it, but it's probability brokerage, right?
Exactly.
Because
That's perfect.
the percentage is not going to close or go through.
Yeah, that's
What,
perfect.
no matter how many deals you have, either it's 3 or if it's 30, like a
Yeah.
percentage of those are not going to close.
Yeah. And so I use the analogy that leasing pays my bills and the sales is just kind of a cherry on top. We do a fair amount of sales throughout the year, but I think it's worth noting none of that's possible without the leasing performance, right? We sell buildings that we lease up. And so if I'm not doing 50 to 60, 70, 80, 90 deals a year, I'm never going to get those opportunities to make those 6 figure fees. And so I think they all work together for each other. But like I said, you got two different routes to go in this business. And if you're choosing leasing, well, frankly, the only way you make a living in leasing is to do volume. Leasing is a volume game. And we'll probably go into it, but it's like, how do you balance all that? That's a totally different conversation.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that. I mean, but right before that, let's talk about your transition from apartment lease specialist in college to, walking in on January 23rd, 26th of 2019, or was it
2018.
18? 2018, right? It's not an easy business, right? So let's talk about your very beginning and a little bit about that journey, and then how maybe you got into your specialization, because you are a specialist.
Yeah. So 2018, we were in pretty much year 9 of what is typically a 7-year cycle. So I'm not going to act like I know everything about 2008, 2009, because I was in middle school, but 2018 was a wonderful time to get into real estate. I'll go into why I believe that, but it I did my first deal in 3 months, and that's probably a tiny bit unheard of in this business. Not only did I come into a shop that serves junior brokers so well, but I'd be an idiot not to at least mention that the market was in a good spot in 2018. So deals were frankly easier to come by. They were actually getting across the finish line with a little bit of ease. And I showed up to the office every day during the internship program, and tried to be as professional as possible. I already had my real estate license, which was frankly a step up on some other folks. And if we're going to go into a little bit about Resolute as a shop, Resolute operates on our buffet system. So, all I had to do was balance my internship work and answer the phone as quickly as possible to get on the phone with leads. And it's what I did. I'd show up every day, talk to as many people as I possibly could. I wasn't to the point of cold calling yet because I was still balancing my internship work. But for anything inbound that made any sense to work on, I was putting my all to it. And, at the time I was still in college. So no wife, no kids. And so I had so much free time. I mean, I was in one class and I never went to it. And so I just had a ton of free time. And when we think of free time, we frankly think of time to work. It's not really free time. It's just more time that we can work. And so I still remember my first deal to this day. I picked up the phone, and it was a Mexican sweets shop, elotes and mangoes with tahini on top. It was cute.
Yeah.
And they wanted to be in one of our shopping centers. Kevin Murphy at the time was at the company, and it wasn't a fit for the shopping center that Kevin was representing that they were calling on. And so I flipped it, which is the most basic trick in the book is, hey, it's not going to work for what you called on. Let me help you find something that will work. And so Kevin had the genius idea. I don't know how genius it was, but hey, there's a shopping center right across the street and there's a vacancy that would fit perfectly. How about you tenant rep this tenant into that shopping center? And so with Kevin holding my hand, I'll be honest, he or we got this cute little, I think they were called Fruity Crush, into it was probably 1,200 square foot space in Manor on 290. And I got a little taste of what it's like to do deals on the commercial side. And it was great. And I remember a lease was signed out of Starbucks, which now looking back on that, we operate so much in DocuSign that sounds kind of silly to get a lease signed in person. But I remember it all. And Kevin was a crazy good mentor for me. And he's still a friend to this day. But I continued to show up every day, continued to pick up the phone, continued to balance what was going on the intern side of things. And with Resolute in our portfolio, we end up having one of the larger portfolios in town. And how we operate, just for the folks listening, it's essentially an open listing platform where anything that's under the Resolute umbrella is free to work on with financial incentive to any of our brokers in the shop. And so through that, I was able to get my hands on a fair amount of deals early, and 6 months later was begging and doing my best to get off that internship program, just because I was done taking pictures. I was done updating stuff on the internet. I was done sitting in front of a computer for however long, 8 hours a day. I wanted to go do deals. I could see the future. I could see the vision. And I finally said, hey, I'd like to get off of this. And Obliged. And I think it was July or August of 2018, I became a full-time broker.
And your journey is which I kind of want to touch on. Maybe Martin could shed some light on the conversation, because I think our program at Resolute, and because of the buffet system, I got to do my first deal as well. But our training program, starting in at as a intern or research associate, and then having the ability to have access to all this information that is like super robust and well organized, and all of the listings that we had. And then we talk about the buffet system, but majority of the people will not know about this, nor I don't find it at any other shop. But Martin, do you want to touch on that a little bit to give some clarity? And
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very unique system for brokerages. Most brokerages, you will have, a landlord representative, and they might have a small team of people that work with them on that specific listing. But if a call comes in and that prospect that's calling on that space you have for lease, if that doesn't work, then in a normal brokerage setting, that would be the end of the road for that lead. Or maybe you have some other listings in your personal portfolio that could work, and you try to flip them into a tenant rep assignment. But the unique thing about the buffet system is that you are able to take that lead to anywhere within the Resolute RE portfolio without necessarily representing that tenant. You are still representing the landlord on the transaction, and you're partnering up with one of the other folks within the company. And so essentially it just opens the playing field immensely for brokers. And for brokers like Michael in 2018, he doesn't have a portfolio for himself. And he's walking in the door, and in an ordinary setting, he would have very little to work on. He would have to go out and hunt down listings, which is a great trait to learn. But if you're spending 100% of your time looking for listings, you're very, very far away from ever earning a fee. And so in the buffet system, he has this very wide portfolio of properties where he can, take these tenants and cold call on new tenants and put our sites in front of them. So we have seen over the years that our junior brokers develop at a much more rapid rate than other firms for this reason. And we've had a lot of brokers in their second and third year become heavy hitters in their regions. And, that's not typical in brokerage. I think Michael fits that box. I don't know when you penetrated that list, but it wasn't too many years into his career that he was number one on Austin's heavy hitter list. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Michael.
I'll be honest, it was number 2.
Okay, there we go.
It hurts. It really hurts. It really hurts.
Well, you were
in such a short span of time is impressive, though. Come on, number 2.
I was a top producer at the company, which may be what we're getting confused, but yeah.
You were number 1 in my mind, man.
Thank you.
So, and how many years into your career was that?
That was probably my 4th year.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a pretty rapid rise to being number 4. And I think Michael would tell you that there's probably no way that he would have made it there if he wasn't working on that portfolio. He would have made it there. Michael would have made it there. I know that about him, regardless of setting, but I don't think he would have made it there that fast if he didn't have this huge portfolio that he could work on. And since then, he's picked up his own listings and, now has a ton of listings himself. So, Michael, I'll let you speak to this, but what about when you're on the other side and junior brokers are working on your listings? Because sometimes that's the question we get about the system is, hey, yeah, that's great when you're a junior broker, but what about when you're a senior broker and somebody comes in and is able to do deals on your properties?
Oh, that's the best part. When we're out pitching landlords for their business, this comes up. Of course, it comes up. And the reality is that landlords don't care where deals come from. All the landlord cares about is that a deal gets done. And with the correct perspective as a non-junior broker, you should understand that any deal for your landlord is a good deal, no matter if you've got to split it 1, 2, 3 ways. And so where I'm getting at is our portfolio of listings is in a place where it is because we are keeping landlords very happy. We are doing more deals than other brokers in town, therefore filling up shopping centers faster, therefore getting hired onto new listings and keeping the business. My perspective is I love when someone brings a deal on the buffet system to me. Makes my job of filling up that shopping center faster or easier, really. And sure, I get my fee cut, but and not to be cheesy, it's a long-term game. And I want to keep my clients until I decide that I hate brokerage, and I want to keep my clients forever. And hopefully my clients feel the same way because we're doing our job. But the reality is that our clients do not care who, what brings a deal. Frankly, our clients are going to be only talking to me. My clients are only going to be talking to me regardless of who brings a deal. But going back to the pitch, I can confidently say, factually say that there are 50, 60 brokers, all financially incentivized within the company to bring deals to your shopping center. And that is not a pitch that other shops can say, because those leads go to the point brokers, the point of contacts, and those brokers work those deals. And again, it compounds, right? You make one landlord happy, they go tell their friend that these folks did a good job, and it just builds. Um, and I don't know where it all started for me. I know what my first listing was, but I where and how we get business into the company is always a funny thing. I mean, it could be a cold call, it could be a referral, it could be some random lunch and coffee, it could be someone saw my name in the Dawson Business Journal. There's no one way that we procure the business, but going back to it, the buffet system is one of our competitive advantages in the market. And while it's unique, it allows us to stand out against our competition. But with the right brokers on the team, having their head in the right place, there is a respect and appreciation for how we operate.
Most definitely. What about specialization? So in your career, starting out taking advantage of the resources and the buffet system, and eventually you're a specialist and more leaning towards representing landlords.
Absolutely.
How did you pivot into that? And can you maybe share about that, the importance of specialization and why you chose that route?
I think it starts with your first listing. I got pulled on to Hutto Plaza in 2018 on Chris Kelly Boulevard in Hutto, Texas, which was a listing that I got pulled on from Andrew Perkel, who used to be a principal in Austin office, and got to work with a landlord that was, as crazy as it sounds, he was or is 6 years older than me. So I was a 21-year-old working with a landlord that was 27, 28. And the only reason I'm mentioning that is we started having this relationship. It was a strong relationship, great relationship. We'd go golf, we'd go, we'd get frequent lunches, and we'd pick each other's brains about, because frankly, it was his first development, and not that he lacked any experience, had far more than me, but there was a lot to learn from each other. And I appreciated his respect that he had for a junior broker like me. And it was a mutual respect. I did good work. We ended up filling up. Funny, I was about to say completely. There was an 800 square foot suite that never got quite filled up and before he sold. But besides the point, we hit it off, and I appreciated working with the landlord over the tenant because there seemed to me to be a tiny bit more sophistication about the business on the landlord side of things. I think it kind of goes without being said. Obviously, one day I wanted to be in his shoes as a landlord myself. And so, if you want to take that perspective, there was a lot to learn from him as a landlord while working for him. I think as you get better in this business and better at your craft, you also learn how to vet and qualify tenants a little bit better. And what I mean is touring on the tenant side, touring as a tenant rep can be pretty arduous. There's never any guarantee of a deal on the tenant side. I could spend an entire day driving around town with a tenant and they could pull the plug on everything at the last minute. And the reason I brought up qualifying and vetting tenants is if I'm doing my job well and asking the right questions on the front end on the landlord side, I'm only touring if it makes a ton of sense and if I believe these tenants are truly qualified. And so with that, I'm spending my time a whole lot better, in my opinion, than working on the tenant rep side. And there's going to be people that disagree with this. Let's also mention that tenant reps make 2 times as much as landlord reps. So there's an added incentive on that front. But I felt that my time was better spent on the landlord side. And frankly, it had a lot to do with how much I was in my car and out touring. Because early on, you learn pretty soon that touring with unqualified tenants is an absolute waste of time. I mean, the last thing you want to go do is spend 2 hours of your day, get on site with someone, and there's 1,000 different reasons that make a tenant unqualified. But you then learn they've got $10,000 in their bank account, or you then learn they don't even have a brand for whatever their concept is, and that's pretty disheartening and that's pretty discouraging, and you get tired of that pretty quickly. And so on the landlord side, I'm working with, in my opinion, more sophisticated folks. On the landlord side, I'm, in my opinion, spending my day in a more efficient manner. And in my opinion, I am preparing myself for one day being in the landlord's shoes, which hopefully, if you're working in real estate brokerage, that is a goal of yours at the very least. So
So
I think that's
Michael,
what I gravitated. Yep.
you mentioned your ability to screen the tenants much more on the landlord side, or at least screen the deals ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I think for younger brokers that are listening to this episode and listening to you and saying, okay, Michael really knows what he's doing on the landlord side. He does, 60, 70, 80 deals a year. How can I better screen my leads and not waste my time without jeopardizing deal making? How have you learned to refine that process and become better at it? And what are some tricks that you can teach somebody to better screen their leads?
Well, I think it's important to say I'm really talking about the mom and pop side of things. The national folks, regional folks, they don't need their qualifying. I mean, if they've got 3 units in Austin, well, I don't need to ask them any qualifying questions. But when a mom and pop, first time operator comes to the table, there's frankly a checkbox of items that I want to look for and ask for. That includes a business plan. Have you put enough thought into this to create a business plan about your concept? Like, how many employees are you going to have? Just really basic stuff. How much is it going to cost in the first 6 months to operate your business? That's going to show that they put some thought into what they want to do. Branding. It sounds silly, but it's a huge checkbox. I want to know that you've got a name for your business. I want to know that you've got a logo thought about. I want to know, what are your employees going to be? Is this going to present well? What is your storefront going to look like when people walk in? Is it going to be, not even is it going to be, do you have that thought through? And those are all really important items and this is not to say that they can never get that stuff in order and they can come back to me and we can go tour. But the last thing I want to do is go out and tour and spend time touring folks that don't have any of those things in place, because they are wasting my time. And so additionally, and this is where it gets kind of sensitive and you learn through experience on how to handle this one, but financial capability is super important, right? Going back to the example earlier, I don't want to tour with someone that's got $10,000 to their name. They are not going to be able to, let's start at the beginning, write a first month's rent and security deposit check, much less be able to build out their space, much less be able to operate their business for 6 months. And so the more you can find out about these folks that, perhaps they're first time operators, perhaps they're second unit operators, they're mom and pop. The more you can find out about them early on, the better that you're going to be able to qualify them as a tenant, and then, in the back of your head, know how much time you should really be spending on these folks.
And also to help them, honestly, because
That's a great
their
point.
idea of starting a business is quite easy in the air in their head, but when you're picking up that phone, you have a lot of good information to help that person really start out, point them in the right directions of maybe who to talk to before starting this business, what kind of money you're likely going to need, expectations of getting into a lease with somebody, right?
And just going back to, I'm not asking how much money people have every time I go out
I
and
am.
someone, but you get pretty tired of touring with folks that are not financially strong. And one step further, I don't want my landlord going into a deal with someone that's not financially backed appropriately. That's just a recipe for failure. So
Well, I think Ray's point is important, that you're helping them out too, because sometimes, if you're posing all of those questions in a way that comes across as this is all for you and not wasting your time, it can, come across as much more threatening and frankly be much less effective in getting information from that prospect. But if you're more conversational and approaching it from a, hey, I can help you out, I can, be your ally in this thing, you're going to get a lot more out of that prospect. Not to mention the fact that, if they are qualified and they're coming to your shopping center, they're more likely to do a deal with you and potentially become your client on the tenant side in the future. So, or at least the company's clients. I think the approach that a broker takes with that is critically important. And obviously, Michael is very good at taking that approach. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing the kind of volume he is doing.
it's important to say, I mean, if I just toured with anyone and everyone, I'd be touring all damn day, and I don't have the time to tour all damn day because, kind of like the pipeline, not everything's going to come to fruition. And so I need to spend my time well. That is the best thing for the landlord, for me to spend my time well. It'll allow me to prospect for more qualified tenants for their projects.
So you've had, from my view, had one of the most accelerated careers from starting out to where you are now as principal of the Austin office. During that time, so becoming the principal now, obviously a lot more responsibility. So how has your roles changed from just being the 1099 broker, meaning, totally focused on you and your business, but now you have a lot of responsibility to take care of the younger agents as well. So, like, what are you seeing in that change for yourself?
Well, I mean, Resolute promotes from merit rather than necessity. I mean, there was no, and Martin, you could probably correct me if I'm, there wasn't a need for a principal, a second principal in the Austin office. There wasn't a need for an additional leadership position. Rather, I'm in the position I am now because of the example that I was setting as a junior, or regular broker, right? I was always in the office. I was always sharing my tips and tricks. I was always, a phone call, text away for the folks in our office. Of course, production's a huge part of it, but, if you're not producing, then you're not going to make it anywhere in this business, much less to a principal role. But, I think the biggest thing in our business as a leader, as a principal of an office, is presence, being there for the folks that are looking up to you and need your guidance, your coaching, your training, whatever it might be. My day-to-day's not changed all that much, right? I lead a Tuesday morning team meeting. I talk to Martin and David every once in a while, but I'm still grinding out deals. I am still showing up to the office. I'm still talking on the phone with my clients weekly. None of that has changed. Frankly, all that's changed is a title, right? A tiny bit of leadership responsibility, and just constantly setting an example for the folks in the office. Yeah, we're trying to recruit all the time and we're interviewing folks, but I think everyone in town's doing that. We're constantly trying to make additions to our team that make sense for our team. And, it kind of goes to another point where we've got a great team in Austin, great team of brokers that love being in the office, and they're all handpicked. We don't just let anyone onto the team. make sure that they're a good fit. We make sure that they're bringing value to the table rather than removing it. We make sure that their commitment level is the same as each and every other broker in the office. We just not lost a broker. We're recruiting a broker, and he went to a different shop in town, and I asked him, I said, what was your reasoning behind that? And he said it was our expectation of being in the office so much. And unfortunately, I don't regret a single part of that. Our expectation, the most reward comes from being present in the office. And this isn't like a real estate hardo cold calling message. It's about collaboration and being around like-minded people. If I'm sitting at home all day, which I'm sitting at home right now because I've got a 4-month-old baby. But if I'm sitting at home right now or every day and never coming to the office, I'm losing that face to face. I'm losing those phone calls that are going to my office line or going to the office. I'm removing myself from any sort of leadership impact that I may have on others and mentorship. I'm not adding anything to the team by being at home. And so, yeah, we do set a little bit of an expectation that you are most productive. Your expectation is to be in the office. And that's just us. That's our way of doing things. It's not the right way of doing things or the wrong way of doing things, but it's how we get the most value out of the brokers in our office. And not to mention, that phone is constantly ringing at the office. Those leads are constantly coming in. And you can make it's probably just the truth. You can make more money by just driving down the road to the office than sitting at your home. For what we do, right? And so I don't even know where I was going with that question or what that answer, but that is hugely important to us in our office.
Well, I think you articulated it well, and he was asking how your life had changed since you become principal,
Yeah.
and how your role has changed. And I found your answer interesting. And as you were explaining it, I said, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it is because of what we had discussed previously about the buffet system and the collaborative nature of our platform, is that you were already working and supporting all of these junior brokers when you were not principal, because you were working on deals with all of them constantly and helping them through these deals. So maybe your life has not changed a whole lot because you were already doing all of these things and you were doing them very well. You were making a lot of deals with these other brokers, and brokers were getting a lot out of the relationship that they had with you, and that's why you were promoted to principal. But yeah, just sort of your whole philosophy around brokerage and how you're explaining the buffet system and stuff really does embody sort of what we've tried to make Resolute all about. And so that's why you were promoted, and I believe it now that you say it, that your day to day probably hasn't changed all that much.
No. And it's interesting. I probably am working on a deal with every broker in our office, and that is a reflection of the buffet system, but it's also a reflection of the collaboration in our office. I go out and pick up a new listing. I've got the choice with who I want to work on that listing with. And sure, I've got my preferences, but sometimes I'll put a junior broker on a listing because I want the best, or I want them to gain some experience. And so, yeah, I'm on listings with probably every broker in the office, and I'm working deals with probably every broker in the office right now. And that's probably pretty unique, unless you're on a team, a defined team at your company, you're probably not working on deals with every single person in that office. One step further, if you want to get into it, I'm able to mentor each and every one of those folks, and to an extent, while we work these deals. Constantly on the phone with, I probably talk or text to each person in our office every day, whether I'm in the office or whether I'm not. And so communication, whatever you want to call it, you're constantly teaching, you're constantly being looked at as a mentor, as an example. And I really enjoy Resolute because of that opportunity.
Well, yeah, one of the interesting things I found when I was principal of the Houston office and switched into that role from just straight brokerage was I found it made me a much better broker when I sat down and actually thought about the things that I wanted to communicate to a young broker. And I'd say, okay, am I living up to these things? Am I doing these things? Wait a second. No, I know these are the things I need to be doing. I'm not even doing them. And I sure as hell wasn't going to go across and tell somebody else to do something I wasn't doing.
Yeah.
And, that would feel completely inauthentic. So I was like, okay, I need to start doing these things myself. And it made me a much better broker. I mean, it made me execute things I just wasn't going to do on my own until I, had to do that. Otherwise, I'd just be telling somebody to do something I wasn't going to do.
Yep.
There is that level of responsibility and that more accountability, right?
Yeah.
For what
absolutely.
we're doing.
And I mean, deals are like repetitions in the weight room. The more you do, the stronger you get, the better broker you become, the more experience you have. And I've always liked that philosophy. No matter how poorly a deal may pay you, I'm gaining experience, positive or negative, from everything that I do. And I think it's an important perspective for new brokers to have when they get in the business is, like, sure, I guess you can come in day one and start chasing six-figure deals, but you're going to fall on your face so many times chasing those six-figure deals before you do one. Whereas on the leasing side, it's a little bit more gracious towards brokers. Arguably, there's probably a little bit less mistakes to be made. And without a doubt, it's on a less impactful scale financially on the leasing side. And so, I mean, I'm approaching 500 deals in my career. Everything's been a repetition. Everything's been a building block to the broker that I am today. And there's a lesson to be learned from each and every deal you do. So, the message there is don't come in chasing the big deals. You're never going to grow as a broker just chasing those. You're going to have to do some smaller deals before you even get the opportunity to do the larger deal, before you have the trust required by a client to hire you onto a larger deal. And, it was only 2 or 3 years ago where we started, or where I was included on the hiring of onto larger centers, larger developments. And that is a reflection of the volume I've done over my career. That's the reflection of doing a ton of $1,000, $500 deals, right? Getting experience under my belt, because I'd argue that, I'm worlds ahead of the broker that's done 100 deals making the exact same amount of money as me. I've talked to more people. I've, struck out a whole lot more. I've failed a whole lot more. I've learned, and so going back to the very beginning question about why do I chase this route than the other, I feel like I'm learning a heck of a lot more, making me a more valuable broker along the way.
For sure. Well, cool, man. Almost out of time, but before we go, a couple really quick questions. So, best advice you've ever received? Something that sticks out to you.
Yeah, gonna have to edit out this silence, but
That's okay.
We can do that.
Yeah. Best advice I've ever gotten is I wrote this down, Ray.
Take your time, buddy.
Was it in my whatever, I'll get past it. Probably the best advice I've ever gotten is don't expect more than what you put in. A lot of folks come into this business thinking it's going to be some sort of silver platter. Oh, here you go, right? Oddly enough, at Resolute, it's a tiny bit of that, but it's a lot of hard work that's got to be put in too. It's a lot of knowledge that has to be obtained too. Sitting here thinking about another amazing piece of advice I got was, we are two things in this business. We are what we know and we are who we know. And that's it, right? And so if you can focus on those two boxes, the what and the who, it simplifies everything you do every day.
I like that.
Because, if I stop going to lunches and coffees and meeting with people, well, that's the who. If I stop calling people, asking for market data and staying on top of new listings in the market and, base rents and, market TI, that's the what. And so when you break everything that we do down, we all call this a relationship game. Well, it's also a data game. It's we are who we know and what we know. And I think that was really, really genius. And Dave Burgraff is actually the one that told me that way back when. And he was a very, my time is my time, and every single hour in the day is blocked out, and I appreciated that a lot. It simplifies everything that we do.
That's a good one. How about favorite deal you've ever done, or one that really sticks out to you?
I thought about this. It was 2 years ago. I was driving the market. I mean, this just has so many lessons in it. But I was driving the market with Austin Aguilar. When we're driving the market, we've got our land glide out and our ownership info and all that stuff. And we're just, driving around, seeing what makes sense, trying to pick stuff up. And we drive by a automotive complex, if you will, paint body dealership sort of thing. And I saw that it was owned by one of our existing clients. And so in the car right there, I called him. I said, "Hey, what's up with this thing? Obviously, would you sell this thing?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'd sell it. Here's our number." It was a fantastic number. It was like a 8 cap or something. And it was Austin address too, fully leased. And I said, "Cool." And it wasn't a project that had ever been on my radar. It only happened through driving through the market. But picked up the phone, called my client, said, "Yeah, I'd sell it. Here's my number." Great number. And so Austin, sitting in the passenger seat right next to me, called Robert O'Farrell of JLL and told him about the entire opportunity. They had 1031 money, and they closed 9 days later. And I think Austin and I both made like $40,000 on it. So it was the quickest money I'd ever received in this business. How can it not be your favorite deal, making fast
That's a good
money
one.
like that, using
Frictionless.
driving the market, using your existing relationships, using the person that's sitting right next to you, him calling his client or his relationship, not even a client of Austin's, but his relationship. They just happen to need and I say need, they just happen to want exactly what we had at that time. And boom, it was great. And those deals never come around, as y'all two know. But if I had to pick one, that one, probably the easiest money I'd ever made in this business.
I like it.
Yeah.
What would you be doing if not commercial real estate? It's probably a hard one.
Probably left field, but probably be a high school football coach.
Interesting. Did you
I
play
was
when you were
really athletic, but I was the kid who in high school I played football. I was the kid in high school that was on the bench, but knew every single play, knew what every single person on the field should be doing for everything. I was talking to the coaches, on a whiteboard, drawing up new plays that I had come up with in my head. I really knew the offense. I knew how everything wove together. I ran like a 5.5 40-yard dash, so I was never going anywhere in that world. But I loved football, and I loved the behind the scenes of football, and I loved football brains. I loved high school coaches, right? They were great mentors for me. And as not talented as I was, I really had the brains for it. And so it has nothing to do with real estate brokerage. It has nothing to do with anything sales related at all. And it's probably not a very well or high paying job, but I think I'd probably be a high school football coach.
Well, the opportunity is still there for you.
Yeah, sure. I
It
could
can happen.
go do some football at 6 a.m. and be at the office by 8.
Yeah, I think some of those Texas high school football coaches earn a decent dime.
Well, yes, you're right. Some of them do. You're right.
Great. Final thoughts for brokers or your customers or prospective customers or people you want to work with out there that are tuning into the episode today.
Yeah, I mean, our formula at Resolute on the leasing side is exposure. I always kind of boil it down to that. I'm not going to be able to guarantee any sort of timeline for when your project gets filled up, when it gets sold, when we're going to be able to bring a deal to the table. But what I can tell you is we've got a fantastic formula for getting exposure on listings. And that occurs on the internet. It occurs on the phone. It occurs on email, text, whatever. Message to future clients would be, we've got an incredible formula that sets you up for filling up your center quicker than others, other shops in town. And it is all revolved around exposure to listings. There's not one thing that we do well. We do 1,000 different things well. And any broker that is able to guarantee you some sort of timeline for getting deals done, bringing things to the table, it's probably time to talk to a different broker, because that's when overpromising and under delivering occurs. That's the last thing I want to do. I want to under promise and over deliver. So I think that's what it all boils down to is exposure. And I'm not talking about exposure to Michael Noteboom. I'm talking about exposure to my clients' projects, what they're putting their hard money into, what they're taking a risk on going out and building. I want to be a teammate to them, and my role in that team is to get eyes on their project. If I can put 1,000 eyeballs on their project, I know I'm going to be able to get something done, even if it's just one deal. I'll take those odds though. And of course, we do our best to grow our younger brokers, grow our office, grow our company as a whole. We've got an amazing team in Austin at the least, and we've got 25 brokers in Austin that wake up every day wanting to broker real estate deals. And I think that's really special. I think there's too many folks right now that don't have high enough expectations, high enough standards for themselves. And I think it's a very cool thing to be able to reach what I believe is, some sort of potential financially, professionally, whatever. I mean, never in a million years did I think that, getting to this point financially and, as a principal would ever be possible. But waking up every single day, keeping in touch with the folks that you need to be keeping in touch with, and working your butt off is critical, and will lead to more fruit than you could ever imagine, right? More fruit than your peers are making. Then you put yourself in a little bit better position for the rest of your life. And that's kind of my philosophy, is work now so that the rest of my life is a little bit easier. So yeah.
Well said, sir. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, buddy.
Thank
you, Michael.
For the opportunity.
Congratulations to the family, the new addition, and more success to you. And looking forward to making deals done with you as well.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Resolute Reveal. Huge thanks to Michael Noteboom for joining us and sharing not just his professional path, but the principles and practices that have anchored his success in a fast-moving market like Austin. If there's one thing that stood out today, it's the discipline, relationships, and long-term mindset that really set great brokers apart. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow, share, and leave us a review. It helps us reach more people in the commercial real estate world who are building their own version of success. Until next time, this was Resolute Reveal.